Welcome back to Higanbana no Saku Yoru Part 3. In the last part, a lot of stuff happened, such as Mesa Mesa finally killing Kanamori, and Marie coming back to life, as I guess as a zombie, or something of the sort. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. I'm kind of curious on how the story is going to proceed from this point on, because Kanamori to me was like, well, how can I say this? You basically established a conflict with the main character and the antagonist, which is him, and now that he's dead, how will the story proceed on? Will it move on to another target that Marie had relationships before? If that were to happen, I think that would probably be a little bit weird because we are pretty much exposed to Kanamori himself at the beginning of the game, and he's established to be a douchebag. But, I don't really understand what's gonna happen from this point. Maybe we might understand more about the other yokais and the other mysteries around the school, and Medie herself will get to know them. So, let's dive in and find out, shall we? Okay. This part, yeah. At the end of the day, no one had seen Kanamori. Okay. Of course, neither had they seen Marie Moria. Interesting. But the one called the master of the infirmary, the Western doll called Higanbana, was even now sitting on top of the medicine cabinets. There was a rumor that inside the bathroom of the former school building lived the yokai. It was said each night one could hear the accursed screams of the pitiful teacher who had been strangled to death. In accordance with the recent school reorganization, when the school became a mammoth school bursting with pride at the number of students it contained, so too then came the strange school tale about the 7 mysteries adding one more to their number. Higanbana no Saku Yoru. Okay. Oh, that was it? Interesting. Alright, I guess that was a little short story. Weird. Oh, I thought it was going to continue from that. I didn't expect it to finish. What else? The spirit camera. Fatal frame? Mesa-san's a spirit camera. Interesting. So, what's going to happen exactly? Is it gonna be about, Is it gonna be about each little, mystery? So in that case, we would have 7 more to go. That's weird. Let's click this. What the hell's gonna happen? I didn't expect it to finish so soon. This is the strange story of how, with the reorganization... Okay, it's a continuation. With the reorganization of their local school, the students took pride in the new, larger building. As well as the resident 7 school mysteries also grew by 1. Okay. The tale of how Takeshi Nonomiya got his hands on a camera begins many years ago with an incident that happened in the science prep room. This week, his group had the duty of cleaning the science lab and science prep room. The science prep room was by far the more interesting of the two, as it was full of strange things. And because of that, it was popular among the students. That day, he had earned the right to clean the science prep room after winning a round of rock, paper, scissors. Who the hell wants to clean a science prep room after winning rock, paper, scissors? Isn't normally the other way around? There were a few students who did cleaning diligently, but there were also many who just used the time to goof off. That day as well, there was a group of girls skipping and chasing each other around all through the lab, science prep room, and even out into the hallways. By chance, at that time, he was all by himself. He had finished sweeping, and was flustered to notice that he was the only one still cleaning, so he was about to call for some of his buddies in the group. Again, the group of girls, giggling all the while, chased each other around through the lab, out the prep room, and back into the hall. At that time, the last girl of the group happened to bump into a human anatomy dummy with her shoulder, sending it crashing to the floor. It hit the floor with such force that it broke, its pieces scattering here and there. Just by looking at it, he could tell that it could not be more horribly broken beyond repair. She and he paused for a moment, dumbfounded by what had happened. Then their eyes met. To Takashi Nonomiya, it was just an accident that had occurred right before his eyes. He had no desire to cheer or panic, at the very least, since he wasn't the culprit himself. He felt pity on the girl, considering how she would apologize to the teachers and how angry they would be. But after giving him an uncomfortable look, the girl fled back to the corridor. Then she resumed chasing after her friends. What the hell is wrong with this girl? He was left alone with the scattered fragments of the fallen anatomy dummy. From here on, this became a strange tale. Despite his insistence that she had broken the anatomy dummy, the girl and her friends claimed she had done no such thing. Okay, so she lied. No, in fact, they even went so far as to say none of them had gone near the science prep room. So she lied again. But the image of the girl knocking over the anatomy dummy right before his eyes was burned into Takashi Nonomiya's mind. It was fixed there so clearly that, if he could, he would have printed and developed it like film. But the girls wanted him to produce real proof if he had it. But one can't develop that which is seen by eye alone. So he had no proof to give. Those girls were normally good students, and, thinking statistically, girls at that age are more trustworthy than boys. On top of that, the girls had united their many voices against his. As a result, no matter what he did, the teachers decided Takashi Nonomiya was lying. It wasn't like he was beaten for it, only harshly scolded. But it was so very frustrating. Oh, he would never forgive the girls who had lied. But what was truly frustrating was that he couldn't present the truth he had seen with his own eyes. Even though people can see the truth with their eyes, as long as they have no proof to back it up, they cannot call it truth. Definitely true. In other words, a person cannot see the truth with their eyes alone. Only by developing what has been captured on film can anyone see the truth. In his current state of mind, he began to wish strongly for something like a camera that could capture the truth and develop it into pictures. Interesting. His decision to aim toward becoming a reporter or cameraman who sought the truth was a natural result of his youth and righteous indignation at that time. And so, that became the catalyst. From then on, he slowly began to enter the world of photography. But something like a shocking photograph that would fulfill his righteous desires did not come quickly. That lens was instead turned upon the more ordinary things that were close at hand, and before he knew it, he took almost poetic pleasure in the simple things he was able to capture day by day. As those days continued, his happiness eroded away at the frustration he had felt from those false accusations, and soon he began to even forget the name and face of the girl who had caused it all. So, since no one else in his class was quite as passionate about cameras, this hobby became his entire identity in the school. The concept that Takeshi equal camera became a matter of fact, so that even during the outdoor school trips, he was allowed to bring a camera along for school journalism purposes. Hold on, let me go back here. Poor guy. That was a huge boost to his self-esteem. Okay. And he even thought that it might be nice to pursue a job involving photography in the future. Oh, so you might have learned a thing from that other guy from Higurashi. Okay. So joining the newspaper club came naturally in the flow of events. He was valuable as the person with the most knowledge of cameras in the whole club. And so he would feel a thrill of joy whenever the club counselor called him cameraman. The room was very old. However, in a school that was growing to meet the needs of the increasing student population, having a room that had some obvious history was a mark of pride for the newspaper club. In the room, the club members sat around a desk on folding chairs. The shelves on the walls were overflowing with old books, documents, and clippings, as well as old and broken equipment. There was no way of telling what belonged to the club originally and what had been brought and forgotten by members long ago. And above all, the stench of dust and mildew lingered in the chaotic club room. You know this newspaper club. It seems we've got a super long history. Even before the war, this club's been around since the day the school opened, so the rumors say. The club president muttered this suddenly, while the club was in the middle of chattering idly rather than deciding on the theme for their next bulletin. Takeshi, looking for some kind of interesting idea they could go with, was fishing around in the old shelves. I wonder if he's gonna do, like he's gonna try to capture the yokai stuff on film. That would be crazy. Because some of the older shelves in the back had mountains of piled books. Some went as far as to say the place was a nest of demons, and once carelessly entered, no man could return. That's a bit extreme. He was hoping that in that hidden place, he would find something rare sleeping. Something amazing enough to put this endlessly repeating meeting to an end. Nonomiya, how's it look? Dug up anything interesting yet? If you're that far back, it's probably all pre-war albums and stuff. You're right. It's amazing. We're in the same room, but over here it feels like I stepped right into the Meiji period. Like some kind of time capsule right here in this room. Yeah, only, minus the capsule. Everyone laughed hard at that. Weary from the fruitless meeting, it was as if everyone's boiling point for laughter was at a much lower temperature. Just like the club president had said, most of the books of the shelves tucked away in that nest of demons were amazingly old. Even just looking at the dates, they weren't just Taisho era. There were many that went all the way back to Meiji. As he went through the books, he even found the old dried ominous remains of insects. Ugh. The term nest of demons wasn't all talk. Oh. Suddenly, Takeshi found it. It was an old instant camera. Instant photos tend to lose their color quickly, so it would have been useless for records. However, by using it, one would never need to go through the hassle of a dark room for developing as they would with a normal camera. To put it simply, it was thought of more as a kind of toy camera. I'd always wanted one if I could get my hands on it, but before today I'd never had the chance. But I somehow felt uneasy about this. That I had found an instant camera like this, buried among a mountain of books that dated back to the school's founding, somehow made me feel uneasy. It was an old camera, but it was beyond state of the art at the time of the school's founding. In spite of that, it had been buried in the depths of this place as if it had been sealed away. I touched it. I felt a tiny jolt, almost like a static shock. I timidly pulled my fingers back, then reached out to touch it again. It was cold to the touch. There were no names written on it or any labels marking it as school property. Judging by how dusty it'd be fair to assume that it had been broken and then abandoned here by some student long ago. I wonder if I put some new batteries in it, would it even work? No. Even if it did, I can't use the film inside something this old. It had probably expired years ago by now. But somehow Takeshi just couldn't tear his eyes away from this toy he had found. Maybe, just maybe, it could still work. if he could always throw it away again. If not, he could always throw it away again. Sorry about that. If it did work, it would be the perfect plaything to change up his everyday life. President, do you think this thing still works? Takeshi, hoisting the instant camera, once again climbed his way through the demonic piles of books and returned to where the other club members were. What the heck is that? An old beat-up camera? Was it dropped back there? Yes, all the way in the very back. Maybe it's something one of our predecessors forgot long ago. The other members hoped maybe there'd be something interesting photographed on the film left in the camera. But because this was an instant camera, it didn't retain film. It would instantly develop and eject after taking a picture, thus no trace of past pictures could be found. It wasn't as if there were any club members who wanted to touch this sort of old dusty camera. After someone suddenly interjected a pun, they all laughed and their focus on the matter completely vanished. Short attention span, people. Takeshi left them to themselves and put some new batteries into the instant camera. He wasn't expecting it to work. If it didn't, he'd trash it. In the 1 in a million chance it did work, it would be his lucky day. Those were his feelings as he changed the batteries. He turned it over. To his surprise, a glowing light signified that it was receiving electricity. Takeshi aimed the camera at his clubmates, who were still laughing among themselves, and pushed the shutter. The shutter resisted quite stubbornly, but then it made a pleasant snapshot noise with a click. The club members were shocked when the ancient camera managed to take a picture. Of course, Takeshi was as well. Then a picture appeared sliding from the front of the camera. At first it looked like there was nothing on it, but slowly an image began to appear. Whoa, that's amazing! It actually worked? Did you capture any ghosts in the picture? Ah, that's very funny, shut up. An old strange camera like this could probably do that, right? Now that you mention it, I feel like I heard a story like that from someone who graduated. Somewhere in this room there was a hidden camera that could photograph souls or something like that. Ah, I heard that from him too. He told me that when someone took a class picture with that camera, students who shouldn't have been there developed on the film. As they were telling these stories, the image on the photograph began to appear. Everyone crammed in close together, butting heads as they tried to see if there was anyone else in the picture. Of course, they did not conveniently see a spirit photograph. The photograph had taken only a mediocre everyday scene of their club. Perhaps it betrayed their hopes, but at the very least, it could serve as a nice memory of their meeting that day. The picture was fairly vivid. Even though this kind of photo couldn't be used for long-term records, it was pretty good for a toy camera. Club president, about this camera, would you say it's alright if I take a look at it for a bit? Yeah, why not? The guy who brought it probably forgot about it a long time ago. It's old, so you probably won't be able to find parts or film for it. You found it, Nonomiya, so it's fine if it's yours now, isn't it? Just like that, Takeshi became the camera's new owner. It could be said that the camera probably held no particular interest to the rest of them. There were only a few shots of remaining film left in it. Someone probably couldn't even play around with it even though it was a toy camera. Even so, his encounter with this camera must have tied him to a divine plan of great importance. With that kind of positive thinking in mind, he headed for the exit. In the end, as usual, the group had fallen back to deciding on a safe theme for the bulletin. More than safe, the idea was so uninteresting that it should have been rejected as soon as someone said it. If they were going to decide on something like that, they should have done it earlier instead of wasting so much time. Oh well, it was always like that. It was the evening, dusk. In the hallway, stained orange by the setting sun, there was no sign of any other students. From a distance, one could hear the rousing shouts of the athletics club. But those were so distant, they only served to accent the hallway's loneliness. So, There was no way I could have bumped into someone. So I was so excited about the camera that I couldn't take my eyes off it as I walked. Whoa! So when I suddenly noticed that someone was there, I jumped in surprise. And in that moment I felt the camera slip from my fingers. The camera was such a fragile thing. What the hell is up with this Higanbana sudden appearance? I didn't expect this. If it hit the ground, it'd definitely shatter. But with the grace of a badminton player hitting a birdie at the last moment, the girl before my eyes gracefully scooped the camera out of the air. It had been a hair's breadth from hitting the ground. You should watch where you're going, right? Next time a camera might not be the only thing that falls over. Giggle, giggle, Google. The girl laughed with perfect grace and elegance. From the way she spoke and the atmosphere, I assumed she was an upperclassman. As I bowed in apology, I glanced at her name tag, but maybe by rain or something else, it had been washed out and was impossible to read. And so, I was caught in a strange situation of not knowing whether the person I was talking to was older or younger than me. But it really didn't matter how old she was, did it? The whole thing was my fault for being so absent-minded. So regardless, Takeshi apologized to her as he would to an upperclassman. I'm terribly sorry. Also, thank you very much for catching the camera. Not at all. This seems like an interesting camera, doesn't it? Ah, you can tell? Yes, it's an instant camera, you see. It's the type that develops the picture as soon as you take it. Though it looks to be a pretty old model. Old things often have various things dwelling within them. That camera looks as though it could even capture things ordinary cameras couldn't, doesn't it? You know about that too? The older members in the newspaper's club had mentioned it. How there were rumors of a spirit camera being hidden in our room. They were saying this could be that camera. That's right. It's true. Eh? The girl giggled. Even though there was no wind, the girl's long hair was swaying as if in a breeze. Pictures are cruel, aren't they? They record the truth for eternity. But no one can really know if that is a good thing or not. Human corpses rot, are eaten by the worms, and give off such an unpleasant smell. But in the end, they return to the earth and cleanly disappear. But what if there was a corpse that couldn't rot away? What if such a corpse remained exposed for all to see forever? I wouldn't want that. If I died, it's unpleasant to think that my body would be devoured and torn into pieces, but the thought of existing forever as an unsightly empty shell is unbearable. So when I say that stuffing dead animals and taking pictures are equally as cruel, you understand, don't you? Giggle, giggle, giggle. Takeshi got the feeling she was making fun of him. Of course, a person could use a camera in the way she was describing. That's why a cameraman needs to be ethical. What was okay to photograph or what wasn't? Understanding the difference, he had to always choose to share only the good things. What a nice thought. If you're that straight-laced about it, perhaps there is a value in entrusting that camera to you. Why don't you run along and play with it? I'm sure you'll have fun. Giggle, giggle, Google. It seemed almost as if this girl knew all about the camera. Of course, there was no way that was possible. That was probably just my imagination. It was almost like she knew of some prank-like mechanism hidden in the camera. The girl giggled with laughter as she walked past my side. In the hallway tinted by the color of twilight, the figure of the girl walking away seemed mysterious somehow. I subconsciously found myself fixing her retreating figure into the viewfinder of the camera. As I did, suddenly from a window near me came a sharp crack. I jumped and, lowering the camera, looked over that way. Maybe a ball from somewhere had flown and hit the glass or something. The window was fractured in the shape of a spider's... Oh! No, that was her. Spider's web. Then I noticed that the girl had turned and was staring at me. It looked as if she was upset at me for trying to take a picture of her without her permission. That won't do. You're free to photograph whatever you want, but let's not point it my way, I was just thinking it'd be nice to give someone a fright, but to do it here would be a waste. Giggle, giggle, giggle. Sorry. I couldn't really tell what she was talking about, but at the very least, I understood that she was upset. She headed toward the other end of the corridor and soon vanished, leaving me alone in a deserted hall with the camera. This camera, just what was it really capable of capturing? The concept of having developed photographs come out on the spot was a joy I hadn't experienced before. Of course, filling up a roll of film and then slowly developing it in a dark room was enjoyable in its own right. But the ease of developing film on the spot with that toy-like camera was truly fun. With instant pictures, there was no long wait, and the colors would fade far faster than a normal photograph. Because they were meant to be taken in the moment and enjoyed in the moment with ease. There were still some rolls of film in the camera, so I stopped worrying about it. Perhaps it was the very fact that it had film left that made it impossible for the camera to rest in peace. To be gathering dust forgotten by someone while there was still film left unused within it was truly a sad thing. If I thought about it that way, it seemed even more like my meeting with this camera was dictated by fate. So I wouldn't worry about wasting the film, and I'd enjoyed taking all kinds of photos with it. Then, when I had used all the film, I'd return it to where I found it. So I thought. Because one day, I realized there were only 2 shots left, so I decided to try something with it. Of course, I had mischief in mind. They say if you take a class picture, a student who should not be there will appear. I figured I'd try it and see if that was true. It was during social studies. We watched a video and the assignment was to write down our impressions. I announced that I wanted a picture of the class and took it just for fun. Incidentally, for some reason the film that would always develop fairly quickly took much longer this time. My classmates, who were all waiting to see what would develop, all said that the old camera was probably broken. They told me if there was film left, I should try again. But I was worried, so I refused, and that was it for photographing that day. Had the chemicals of the film finally gone bad? Somehow, I figured that wasn't it. Maybe it had photographed something that should not be photographed. Perhaps the camera was resisting to spare us from seeing that. That day, the deep words spoken to me by that strange girl in the corridor returned to me. It was as if she had wanted me to take that picture of my class. Maybe that's what she meant by her deep words. I just knew there was something captured in this photo. That said, it was incredibly faint, but I thought I saw the picture beginning to develop. I looked at the photo after school, and it was still slowly developing. But even with that, I still couldn't make out the faces of my classmates in it. Takashi somehow believed it. In this photo, he had surely captured something mysterious. Carefully tucking that photo away, he returned home. And when he ate dinner, took a bath, or the like, he took it out each time to check it. And little by little, it was becoming clearer. And then, in the depth of the night, he thought to give up and go to sleep. Finally, the image appeared clearly for him. He diligently looked over the image, checking the photographed faces of his classmates. No one? Yeah, there wasn't any strange spirit or anything like that on there. Ha 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 ha. What was I thinking? How silly. Before I knew it, I was holding my sides in laughter. Even though that photograph had made me wait like this, there was nothing strange caught on the film. The oddly long time to develop made me wonder, but even though I waited for so long, in the end it was a complete letdown. What developed, no matter how many times I looked at it, was just a picture of my classmates. I looked at it from the side. I looked at it upside down. Something like a long-haired girl glaring, or perhaps a strange light or shadow being projected. I saw nothing of the sort. It was simply a classroom picture with my classmates as they should be. That's right. Every one of my classmates. Only faces I knew. Only faces I knew. There was Tano-kun. There was Fukuda-kun. Here is Nishigawa-san. And Ando-san. And who was that again? Since I didn't really talk to that kid, I can't remember the name. That's even scarier. Because she's dead, isn't she? Who was she again? That absent-minded girl with glasses and that depressed look on her face. It was quite a sad story. We were in the same class and she was even here every semester. But I can't recall the girl's name. Who was she? Who was she really? There was no doubt she was in my class. And yet I can't remember. Who is it? Who is she? Even though it's already time to sleep, somehow I find myself determined to know. I decided that only if I could remember who she was would I let myself sleep. That's right. There was a guidebook from our field trip. Inside, everyone's group divisions were written down, and it should have records of everyone's names. If I look in there, I should be able to find a name I'd forgotten. From inside a pile of books on the bookshelf, I was able to find the guidebook. If I were younger, I would have thrown this sort of thing away without regret. It's just that after making cameras my hobby, regardless of photographs, for some reason I've started to take special care of recording materials. Because of that, I've even kept this guidebook. Opening the guidebook, I could see a list of students divided by 6 people per group. When the groups were formed like this, there were some clearly incapable and pitiful children there. So those kids were gathered up and made into a mishmash group. Being attached to that kind of group was the same as being labeled a black sheep. I was happy because I was with my friends who had always been there with me. I thought to myself, if there were children who hadn't been blessed with such friends, those kids would probably end up tasting the humiliation each time they'd be put into this group. This girl seemed like she would have been in that kind of group, so surely I thought she must be in that section. No, she's not here. It's not her. In the end, I couldn't find that girl's name. No matter what name it was, I'd be able to associate it with her face. And none of these were the name of the girl I'd forgotten caught in the photograph. That bad feeling that had been clouded until now had finally burst free. My classmates' names, I knew all of them. I even knew their faces, so that face without a name isn't from my class. What? What the? Something began to crawl up my spine. There was only one way to be sure. First, I counted all the classmates in the guidebook. I counted them twice to be sure. Even counting them twice, there were 48 in number. Next, I counted all the faces in the photo. If for some reason the number of faces in this photo, if there's more than that, if there's more, my breathing hurried, intensified. My hands began to shake. The heads began to turn round and round in my mind. My fingers was too big to count the faces with. I took out a mechanical pencil, and with its tip I diligently counted the number of faces. Please, let it be 48. If it's 49, please let it be 48. There are 48 in my class, let it be 48. 46, 47, 48, no doubt. There isn't anyone else. Phew. There are 48 students in our class. I had surely counted that many. Toppling over with a thud on the futon, as if to laugh at myself, I burst out laughing. All day today, how much have I been worrying about this single photograph, I wonder? Ah, how foolish, but it was truly fascinating. I was relieved with the result, Or rather, perhaps I was fascinated by a mysterious 49th person in the photograph. It's that camera I had treated like a toy camera from the start. Because of it, I had a lot more fun with it than any normal toy. Only one strip of film remains, but if I left it on purpose and put it back to sleep once again deep inside the clone room, that might be interesting as well. Because future students will find it, and they might enjoy it just as I have. And with that, my meager curiosity was satisfied. I got inside my futon, and as I laid down, I pulled the strings attached to the lamp and turned out the lights. Hey, are you fine with 48? Isn't that fine? After all, there are 48 of us in our class, and that photo surely photographed 48 students. But I was behind the viewfinder, so there should have only been 47. Wah! I finally realized what a terrifying photograph I had taken. The girl with the glasses. I have no idea who she is. Could she truly be dead? But compared to the eeriness expected from a typical ghost photo, I couldn't sense that kind of eeriness from that girl at all. That was my first impression from her image. Whether she was there or not, it seemed as if she underwent that treatment, an unfortunately bullied kid, always placed in the group with the leftovers. It seemed like that kind of pitiful girl. Perhaps even not having her name in her guidebook was another form of bullying her. The more I thought about it, the more familiar her presence seemed among my classmates in the photograph. It wasn't as if she was vaguely reflected in a window or mirror. She had a seat like everyone else, and as she was cowering as if someone were about to throw an eraser at her, she seemed like a normal student. Who is she? The more I looked, the more I stared at her. As if I had no excuse for not remembering her name, I had a feeling she was in her class. That couldn't be. I didn't know her. However, I felt the photo she was in was so natural as a class photograph. What is this? What is this photograph? Who is she? No, what is this camera? Tomorrow, I'll head to the school and check my class. I'll look at the girl's desk from this photograph. And with that, I'll learn who this girl really is. To do something like forgetting she even exists, much less her name. As a fellow human being in the same class, I have no excuse. Why I had no excuse, I had no idea. But anyway, if we hadn't spoken, I thought at that moment, not even being able to remember her as her classmate was extremely sad. Damn. Forgetting an entire existence. I want to read that part again. Hold on. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, everyone. Please transport. I guess he just didn't try to notice her at all. Like subconsciously, he just ignored her. And then I knew, the next day, whether it was coincidentally or inevitable, that morning in homeroom I had the job of making an announcement in front of everyone. Because everyone was present, I saw every person in the class from in front of the lectern. I looked at the desk where the forgotten girl sat. I looked many times over. And so, it seemed I had to cast aside my common sense that told me truth was captured in photographs. After every single thing I did during class, I'd pull out the photo and gaze at it. It was maddening. I didn't want to believe it. Truth is captured in photographs. That was my belief. And because of that, I took pride in being a cameraman. However, something that wasn't true was captured in that image. If that's the case, then I have to know. Basically, I have to find out who this girl is. At that time, I thought that someone thinking this photo was spirit photography seemed both blasphemous to the camera and to myself. So without recklessly showing it to the to people, perhaps thinking her face might turn up in other classes, I indirectly searched for her figure. But this school is truly massive, with an enormous amount of classrooms, even for girls in the same grade. Faces of people I didn't know were everywhere. I imagined she might have really been a girl from another class, and she stealthily mixed herself into our class. After all, that day was a self-study session. Other classes had it too, so students could enter our class to mess around, even pretend to be a student in the next seat over. I thought to myself. But from her sad expression, I couldn't sense that kind of extraordinary ambience about her. If she had projected a more mischievous expression, then there might have been a room for that kind of thinking. Nonomiya, about that camera from the other day. After all that, did he capture anything interesting? What an asshole. Eh? No, nothing at all. Thought so. Ha ha ha. In the club room, my friends had asked about my spoils of war, but I evaded the question. In their minds, they probably wanted to take pictures of Ghost, and it had taken that very suspicious photograph. Even so, I was denying them that. If I showed this photo to them, everyone would probably be in an uproar saying it was a ghost caught on film. But that would contradict my belief that photographs captured the truth. I also thought it was strange, but I wonder, am I not a man of morality? Of course, that time when I felt mortified by those false charges in the science prep room, because I had wanted to dispel those lies, that was my motivation for going into photography. At that time, I had thought over and over again that would have happened if the truth reflected in my eyes had developed into a photograph. The only thing captured in a photo is the truth. I had certainly believed so. Because of that, I don't think I can stand this photograph that hasn't captured the truth. That's not it. Perhaps it wasn't that kind of convenient reason. Perhaps I was just frustrated. That mysterious girl, I probably knew her. And I was frustrated because I couldn't remember who she was. After an exchange with my friends in the club, since we weren't interested in our work, we decided to head home early. Then, in the same orange-tinted hallway from that day, I once again meet that same girl. That's right. Now that I think of it, I believe this girl knows what this camera really is. If so, maybe she can tell me who this mysterious girl captured in this photograph is. If you want to know, I can surely tell you. Even though no words had come from my mouth, regardless, this girl spoke in response to a question I had in mind before I opened my mouth. Without a doubt, that girl is your classmate. If you remember her, she'll surely be happy with that. Giggle, giggle, giggle. There are 48 people in my class. She's the 49th person. Even in the class register and photos, her name isn't mentioned anywhere. Everyone went and forgot her, you see. It's his fault. Are you heading out? Yes. Well, how about you try checking everyone's names by the shoe racks? If she's your classmate, everyone has a place to put their shoes, don't they? There might be ways to tease someone by hiding their desk and chairs, but there's probably no way to hide a locker in its entirety. Giggle, giggle. Checking the shoe racks. By doing that, could I learn that girl's identity? Even though her name wasn't on the class register, for her name to be left on the shoe racks, that's hard to believe. But that strange girl was saying I should try checking there. That prediction she gave me. That if I wanted a surprise, that camera would deliver, it certainly did. So if she's saying that I should check those shoe racks, maybe once again I'll find what I'm looking for. Thanks. I'll try checking it out. You do that. Later. Aren't you heading home? Eh? On this kind of evening, for that girl to be walking in the opposite direction of the exit, I felt something was a bit out of place and spoke to her. If she was taking part in club activities, she'd be at her club room or the gym. If she were returning home, she'd be heading to the same exit as I was. I had no idea what she was doing based on where she was headed. Even the way she walked, she projected a certain atmosphere as if she were taking a leisurely stroll on lunch break. And then she giggled and smiled. Thanks. Why was I suddenly being thanked? I had no idea. The exit is for leaving the school and returning home, you see, so it's useless for me. Giggle, giggle, giggle. Well, well, how about you head home? Your classmates have already left long ago, haven't they? So her class hadn't left school yet, then? I noticed her figure vaguely distort somehow. Were my eyes blurry? As if something were in my eyes, I quickly rubbed them and once again looked down the hall, and the girl's figure had already disappeared. In front of the entrance where students take off their shoes. Just as she said, I tried checking the numbered shelves for the shoes of my classmates, and there weren't any shoes or slippers inside them, but there was one shelf labeled with a name tag stuck to it, all by itself. It seemed like it had been stuck on from a very long time ago. It was a worn-out label. Literally, it made me feel its loneliness, as if it had been completely forgotten. I squatted down to read it, the name on that label. With a name tag this worn out, surely it was a student's from many years ago. There's no way I'd know the name. See, I don't know any Moria. I said I don't know anyone named Marie Moria. Even though I had said those words, I felt as if the smell in the air was beginning to change. It felt like noticing something rotten from the garbage disposal. Just like that, I finally noticed that smell hanging in the air down the hallway. Even though I should have noticed it sooner, I had no idea how long it had been in the air. But now that I've realized it, I remember now that it had always been there. Marie Moria. Oh shit. On a rainy day in the classroom, boys and girls were making noise during lunch break. This not particularly special or unique scenery went through my mind. In a corner of the room, the girls gathered and carrying on. I was ignoring that. After all, because they were bullying. I didn't treat it like watching TV after a meal, but that was my good conscience. How many bad girls were there? They were surrounded the usual target, and they were lashing out at her one thing or another. Even the guys were ganging up on her. It was a truly distasteful scene. But I didn't stop it. I didn't feel any sense of duty to protect her, and since I didn't feel I had any reason or necessity to fight them, I did nothing. During the lunch period, someone threw a piece of bread at her. That hit her head and landed in someone's bowl of stew. They said it seemed polluted and they couldn't eat it, and so on and so forth. As for where in that process there was any value in accosting her, I couldn't tell. Of course, because I had no desire to intervene, I didn't need to understand it, and yet... If you think it's your fault, then apologize. You should have said, I'm sorry earlier. That's right, I'm sorry. Say it. I did nothing wrong. Why do I have to apologize? Who are you kidding? I won't hear that. What do you think? Who do you think is wrong here? We have the verdict. Moria is guilty. Wahahaha. Moria-san, in pain and bitterness, biting hard on her lower lip, hung her head in shame. That's right. That girl was Marie Moria. That name tag perhaps had been waiting a long time for me to remember that. And as if it had finished its duty, it began to dissolve with a hiss. Dust took over as it began to disappear. I blinked and looked again, but all that was there was a solitary vacant shoe shelf. But I didn't need the name tag anymore. After all, I remembered. Yes, in my class, there were 49. I ran back to the classroom, and so I recounted the number of desks, multiplied them in my mind, added what was left, and there were 49. This time it wasn't a hiss. With a whoosh, it was as if a huge wind had blown in. The scent in the air in the classroom changed dramatically. Something had changed, for I, who had no idea what the name Marie Moria meant until moments ago, didn't know what it was, but something had changed. I looked at the bell mark names list on the wall. She was the kind of girl who would bring those to school and have her bell mark score on the wall. Moria starts with M. She'll be toward the end of the list of girls. There it is. Moria, Marie. I pulled that photograph from my pocket. I searched near the desk where Marie Moria had been photographed. And in that place was a terribly warped desk. The top of the desk had been carved with cruel graffiti. Die, ugly, and the like. It was in bad shape. Even her detachable seat cushion that could be used to protect her head in case of emergencies had been covered with ink and was maliciously stained pure black. I slowly took that cushion in my hand, because it was obvious her name would be written on that emergency cushion. Marie Moria. It was clearly written there just like that. I decided I'd make a detour before heading home. I didn't understand what that camera wanted to tell me, but it passed into my hands, and with it I took that photograph. And aside from capturing that girl who shouldn't be there, it must have some meaning. In the classroom shelf was the same field trip guidebook I read last night in my house. By chance, I thought to open it, and just as I thought, inside was Marie Moria's name that I had struggled so hard and over again to find last night. And in her emergency contact information was a phone number, and even an address had been written down. The address was on the way home. It was a public apartment complex. I checked the mailboxes by the elevators. There was no mistake. Among the names by the mailboxes, the name tag for Moria was there. That's it. There was no room for doubt anymore. And I remember, Marie Moria really had existed. She was our classmate. She really did exist, and she even had a home here. That's right, that photograph had doubtlessly delivered the truth. Now the obvious question to ask is, why did we forget about her? No, it's not like we just forgot about her. Her name had disappeared from everything in school, even her desk. I remembered her name, and maybe only I could find her name in the class register and that 49th desk. Could this be that thing from the school ghost story I often hear about? Now that I think about it, I believe I heard about this. That's right, that rumor about the creation of the 8th ghost story. That rumor about the yokai called Meso-Meso-san that appears in the old school restroom. That girl was in fact a bullied student, and that she was killed by a teacher or something, and that she transformed and whatnot. Huh? Wait, what? Have I really heard such a story before now? And the name of that girl was Moria. What? Did I have a memory like that? Perhaps I'm being sucked into the school ghost story because of that mysterious camera. I actually have another question. How did they know that the teacher killed her? What the hell's going on? But that wasn't like a vague ghost story or anything of the sort. After all, the traces of Marie Moria's existence are still here, because even her home is still here. Even though it had always been here like this, the truth hadn't been revealed. I steeled myself, and I called the elevator. With my mind made up, I couldn't go back. I had come this far. I'll see the truth for myself. Finding that camera, taking a picture of the class, remembering Marie Moria, and finally coming here was probably no mere coincidence. Someone, for some reason I don't understand, led me here. I walked the hallway of the complex. The various apartments jostled by the hallway, mixed with the smells of daily life in the various apartments. On the plus side, it was overflowing with life, but on the downside, the place seemed stagnant with an unwelcoming atmosphere, and so I finally arrived. Moria, right here. Affixed to the nameplate was a card written and stained in marker. And written in small print after the last name Moria were the names of 4 family members. Maria's name wasn't on there. Wait, that's not right. It's a 5-member family. I let loose a small breath, summoning up some courage and rubbed my eyes. I rubbed my eyes, okay. Marie Moria. It was as if her name alone had been weathered. And, as if the nameplate remembered her name, at the end of the 4 names in the family, vaguely, Marie began to surface. Why is that exactly? Something's weird with this Marie girl. For some reason, this guy is seeing her in stuff that he shouldn't see her in. But why is that? She's basically dead. Well, I'm not sure if dead. She probably doesn't even exist in the first place. I thought to ring the doorbell, but there was a sticky note there. Out of order, please knock. I looked at the electric meter. It was moving in a way that suggested the family was home. On the way here, there were still apartments with the evening paper at their doors, but there was no paper on their doorstep. That's a sign someone is home. I swallowed hard, and then once again, I looked at the door plate at the name Marie, and then I knocked. I wanted to know the truth. That truth caught on the camera, but what kind of truth was it? I had to find out. Finally, I heard the voice of a middle-aged woman say, "Who is it?" Perhaps it's Marie Moria's mother. I sensed her put on sandals in the entrance, and then looking through the people. Even if she misunderstood what I looked like, I couldn't have looked like a high-pressure salesman. As if to make sure, the door opened with the chain on. As the door opened, along with all kinds of smells, an older woman's face, more beautiful than I had imagined, peeked out. "Oh, young man, what's the matter?" Excuse me. Might you be Moria-san's mother?" "Well, yes, I am, but which of the 2 are you asking for?" 2? If it was like the nameplate read, then there were 2 other sisters aside from Marie and the Moria family. I thought that's what she meant by which of the 2. While saying Marie had 2 sisters implies she exists, then if she didn't exist, asking for her might have seemed inappropriate. The way she put it made it sound like there were only 2. There was no doubt she didn't recognize Marie. Well, it's about Marie Moria." "Eh? Who?" Her mother didn't react to the name Marie. She had decided I must have been asking for another one of her daughters, so she must have misheard Marie's name. But I had anticipated that reaction as well. If I'm guessing right, normally we can't remember Marie Moria. Without seeing that photograph I took with that camera, we can't remember her. So I took that photo from my pocket, and while showing it to her mother, I pointed at Marie Moria. It's about this girl, you see. She does live here, doesn't she?" "Eh? Which girl? Eh? May I have a look at this photo for a bit?" With a profile that's small, even pointing her out with my finger was difficult to indicate where she was. Her mother, with those smells ever so close to her, stared intently at it. I wonder, maybe her memory won't return. Perhaps she'll just think I tricked her into looking at some weird photo. No, that's not right. Because if a person saw a photograph they were indifferent to, they wouldn't concentrate on it for a long time like she was doing. Because I had the same experience, I knew. Her mother was beginning to remember. Well, don't you remember her? Remember? I could tell her words were trembling with uncertainty. I could clearly see her irritation that she couldn't say for sure she didn't know her. Perhaps she pondered that she might not really have a family of 4 in her household, and a memory might be reviving in her mind that she had a family of 5. And then, in a whisper, she muttered, Marie. Yes, it's Marie-san. I repeated that. At that moment, she realized it, the truth about her family. At the same time, she burst with emotion. She screamed, Marie! That's right, Marie didn't come back for ages. Where is Marie? She never came back. Where is Marie? Hey, where is she? She's been gone for days, you know. It's my fault. I forced her to study, never thinking of the girl's personality. Now she's lost to us. She won't come home. She's afraid of me, so she ran away. It's my fault. Where? Where's Marie? Marie, please come home. Wah! I knew those words were deranged. But this was the first time in my life I had seen a scenario so befitting the word. Perhaps if that chain hadn't been on that open door, that woman might have come lunging at me. While she screamed for Marie to come back to her, the woman ran back into the house. I didn't know what she was doing, but I had a hunch. Maybe she was searching for remnants, that she truly had a daughter called Marie. This is getting creepy, and that those traces had always been right by her side until now, but she had never noticed them. For her now, perhaps she was seeing something like Marie's favorite mug. Even in the cupboards, there should have been things belonging only to her family of 4. She must be seeing that 5th member's things now. But why did she forget what's going on? She might have been gathering those things in her confusion, as I heard a great clamor from within. And maybe she thrust those things upon the rest of the family to prove Marie existed. But her family likely doesn't remember the name Marie. As long as they don't see this photograph, that is. Those violent sounds were probably the sounds of those cupboards being turned inside out. Of course, without stopping, she continued to scream and call out Marie's name. I came here intending to ascertain the truth, but what I had been waited for was just a strange conclusion. I don't doubt that Marie existed anymore, and Marie's mother remembered her as well. But even though we remember Marie's existence, it doesn't change the fact that she does not exist. Even though she isn't here now, we remember her as she was. I wonder, did I do something absolutely terrible? Pictures are cruel, aren't they? They record the truth for eternity. That mysterious girl had said that as if she knew that camera's true purpose. Photographs certainly saved the truth. But that truth wasn't always limited to that person's happiness. If I hadn't brought that picture to her attention, that woman would have probably continued believing she had a family of 4, and she would have spent her life in relative peace. However, I forced her to remember. That Marie, one of her daughters, had disappeared long ago and didn't return. That wasn't all. Even her existence had been forgotten by the entire world. So I wonder if anyone can understand her cries of lament searching for her daughter. No one could understand. She repeatedly called Marie's name. But the rest of her family couldn't understand whose name it was. Things were thrown and fell down with loud crashing noises, but I could sense she was coming back to the entrance once more. This time she might release the chain, open the door, and come charging at me. I ran away. Was it because I was afraid of that woman's madness? Or was it because I couldn't face the truth the photograph revealed? I couldn't exactly understand why, but I was absolutely terrified. Takeshi Nonomiya began to run away from the apartment complex, never to return again. And yet he could still hear the mother's screams for Marie. Her screams echoed in the chasm of the complex, and they were screams that sounded as if they came from another world. Whoa. Holy shit, that is so creepy. Since I ran in confusion, I couldn't tell how many wrong alleyways I went down. But since I knew I was somewhere in the neighborhood, without realizing it, I walked down a narrow alley that I had never walked down before. Rather than going down a crowded wide avenue, I felt more comfortable in a forgotten narrow alley where no one would see me. I decided to take out the photograph once again. After checking around to make sure no one else had slipped into this seldom traveled street, I took it out. It's not taboo, you know. No matter how many times I looked, the captured girl's image called to me as if to tell me she didn't want to be forgotten. No, maybe she really was. For the first time, I thought Marie Moria had been completely forgotten for some reason by the entire world. Wanting to be remembered, she might have then developed on this still image. However, her expression was unclear. She clearly looked as if she wanted to be saved. It was as if everyone in class had to be there, so she was unwillingly placed in the photo. It was a resigned sort of expression. Now I began to wonder. After seeing Marie Moria's mother's insanity, I began to think clearly. Did I take a picture that had to be taken? I wonder. And that photo wasn't something that could be taken with just any camera. I had discovered something that was hidden as if asleep from within the jumbled piles of baggage in that place called our clubroom's nest of demons. And on a whim I had taken that picture. No, I'm overthinking it. There's no way someone could rejoice at being forgotten by everyone. She wanted to be remembered by everyone. It must be heartbreaking to have your own family forget about you. And so I had to do as she wanted. That's right, absolutely right. It might have been an excuse, but if I didn't think like that, my mind wouldn't have calmed down. I'll head home. I'll go home, get in a bath, and then I'll at least have dinner and wrap myself up in my futon. I had to calm down. I had to think of what I should do. Or perhaps, if I did nothing, things would be fine, and I could rest easy. In the skyline, from across the alleyway, I could see the tall smoke stack of the recycling plants that was also used as a landmark for this area. If I walked that way, I should see a street I know, or a levee. It was the first time I had walked down that street, but although I had lost my sense of direction, without letting that anxiety get to me, I walked down the alley. But the alley had many turns and bent in many places. Sometimes, like a maze, it would branch off, and, as if the alleyways were playing tricks on me, they would end in mischievous dead ends. The irritation of not finding a street I knew, since it let me briefly forget what happened at the apartment building, caused me to curse aloud without restraint. Huh? What the fuck is that? Ugh! In such a narrow alley, I was startled to find in front of me a looming figure standing in my path. The alleyway was so thin that I wasn't able to pass him without bumping into his shoulders. I wasn't curious to try it either. Regardless, the figure in front of me stood idly in this narrow alley, blocking the way. That figure, in contrast with the broken bicycle, the rain-stained washing machine, and the mistreated plants that lined the alleyway, he didn't seem like he belonged here. My first impression, I thought he was an old British gentleman from a century ago. With a British gentleman's style, he wore a top hat on his head, a suit of some refined taste, and he even had a cane. I couldn't exactly make out his features from under his hat, but I could clearly see that he had a well-grown beard and even a monocle. He didn't look like he belonged in this back alley at all. Or in this country, for that matter. Who the fuck still wears that? And it wasn't as if he was doing anything aside from merely standing, idly blocking the street. He didn't seem like he was out for a stroll or out to cool off for the evening. No, rather he stood fixed facing my direction, looking as if he were expecting me. I started to feel a bit uneasy. Thankfully, there was another street nearby, since I didn't want to pointlessly get near that strange person. Pretending as if the wind had somehow carried me onwards, I then turned down the other alley. As long as I could see the recycling plant's smokestack and use it like a compass, there was no need to adhere to a specific path. Who was he, though, that man? Rather, if I had seen someone out walking around in their underwear, which would have seemed more natural in this sloppy back alley, then maybe I wouldn't have felt so uncomfortable. But for him to be standing still like that, and to be so utterly obstructive. But just like what I did earlier, forgetting what happened just now might be for the best. Once I was satisfied cursing, at last I found an alley heading in the direction of the smokestack. I turned that way. The neighborhood was beginning to darken and lights began to glow from the inside the houses. Perhaps some were preparing dinner. With the sound of mince, the smell of fried food hung in the air. But even so, without any sign of anyone's presence, this alley was a lonely one. I had taken quite a detour, and I felt I had wasted a lot of time. I had intended just to make a quick stop on the way home from school. But now it was already getting this dark. Even by the time I left the school, it wasn't particularly early either. Seeing it was expected made sense, but even so, I felt it was a little early to be getting dark. Who is this dude? Creepy. When I saw that figure once again blocking the way, there was no way I was seeing things. It was those characteristic clothes. I couldn't hide my surprise. That elderly British gentleman once again blocked the way. There was no way there was more than one elderly man wearing a strange outfit like that. So then this had to be the man. But is this even possible? I avoided the old man and took a detour through another alley. Even then, what are the odds of coming across the same old man yet again? The old man stood the same as when I had met him earlier. As if he were expecting me, he stood perfectly still, blocking the alley. Because of the white hat he wore, I couldn't make out his expression. But for some reason he was looking at me. No, I felt he was staring at me. I wanted it just to be my imagination. I couldn't imagine that old man was waiting for me. Earlier, there were sometimes alleys with enough elbow room to squeeze by. But this time there were none. To go forward or go back, those were my only choices. If I asked him to please step aside, would he let me pass? By sheer coincidence, I might have just come across the same old man twice. Or perhaps that old man truly was waiting for me. To know for sure, and to escape this strange scenario, there was one simple solution. I could go back and search for a different avenue. If I met him a third time, and that old man blocked my way, then that would mean he obviously wanted to speak to me. If I had to share words with that mysterious old man, I'd much rather head back the way I came again. Without hesitation, or rather as hesitant as I could be, I turned back. After looking over my shoulder to make sure the old man wouldn't follow me, I began to hurry away from there. Sorry, but I can't stay in this alley. It's already getting dark. I want to get home quick. I want to go home. When my mind understood what was in front of my eyes, chills jumped up my spine. God, I hate that sound effect. Because, even though I had turned my back on him and left, once again I could see the old man blocking my path. This is impossible. There must have really been two of them. Did they intend to quarter me from both sides? What enjoyment could they possibly derive from something so stupid? No, but I can't believe there are two of them. Because the man in front of me and the man behind me look the same. I can't believe there'd be two of them dressed the same like that. Is there any other explanation? Am I supposed to believe that old man just flew past me from behind me at the speed of light? That's not possible. He's not a yokai. But the fact that he was once again directly in front of me, obstructing my path, was the undeniable truth. There was no point turning around and running from him again. Even though that was my theory, I had been completely overtaken by fear, so I once again made the choice to turn and run away. Because this time I was truly afraid. There, when I turned, he was there again, and this time he was closer. The old man continued to block my path. There was no doubt any longer. Every time just as I turned around, he was always on the other side. Even as close as the old man's eyes were, I couldn't see them well from under the shadows of his wide hat. But even so, I could tell he was glaring at me. The way he looked at me seemed just like a snake watching a frog. I felt that if I talked to him now, it would mean my defeat somehow. But until I had an opportunity, I couldn't even lift a finger. And when the old man opened his mouth to speak first, I felt a relief for a moment. Well, I suppose it's too late to say good afternoon. Perchance now is a good time to say good evening, Oh, of course, sir. Good evening. Good evening. His voice was like I thought an old man's voice should sound like, but he gave the impression of a coherent, healthy old man who was easy to talk to. For some reason, his warm tone seemed like a teacher's, and I sensed he might have been a teacher from one of the other classes in school. I thought that was a crazy idea, even though I had just met him, thinking he was a teacher or something like that. Nonetheless, based on what little words we exchanged, he gave me the impression he was a teacher. That idea comforted me. Right before we exchanged such simple words, I had thought he was like a yokai. There's no way someone can talk to a yokai. Humans are the ones who need to talk. At least there was no need to be needlessly afraid. That simply isn't so. In fairy tales and old stories, on occasion humans exchange words with spirits like Tengu, Kitsune, Oni, and other yokai, Yes, sir. Even though I didn't say anything, the old man replied as if in response to my inner thoughts. When being friendly with a pet dog, people talk to them as well, Even if you cannot exchange words, it's possible to communicate with them. If you're talking about sharing words, then there's nothing strange about humans communicating with, not just animals, but yokai as well, Now, I suppose that's possible. I'm sorry. For some reason I apologized. I felt as if I had been lectured for concluding that humans couldn't communicate with demons. No, that wasn't it. The old man was really a yokai, and he was upset that I had mislabeled him? Well, that's fine. That's a topic we can have another time, It's getting late. If you don't head home soon, your mother will worry about you. The old man laughed once again. It seemed as if he were sensing my words before they left my mouth. For some reason, I recalled that mysterious girl I met in that orange-tinted hallway in the back of my mind. If that girl was something more than human, then surely she must be associated with this old man, I wondered to myself. The old man didn't answer that question in my mind. But if I thought about it, maybe it was obvious. Now then, Noromio-kun, you have a strange camera, don't you? My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't how the old man knew about the camera. Your name. After all, I was slowly realizing this camera wasn't of this world. And the ones that would know best about this camera were like him. Not of this world. Yes, sir. I have it. Where did you obtain it, I wonder? In the newspaper club room, Yes. in the deepest section of the club, where books and equipment are jumbled together. That's really quite strange. Eh? The camera was oh so securely sealed away. It's not something that is supposed to be found by humans. Then how could you have found it? It's so very strange. Oh dear, oh dear. I must have been strange to this old man as well, because there was nothing stranger than being called strange by a man like this. You don't need to be afraid. I'm not thinking of catching and eating you. After all, you wouldn't have a conversation with your breakfast, If I intended to eat you, rather than talking, I'd be eating. I thought he was laughing in order to help unravel my nerves, but to me, what I heard is that he would eat me rather than talk. Without knowing who this old man was, I still didn't know why he came to speak to me. But I wouldn't forget his terrifying presence. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'll get quickly to the point. I want that camera back. Eh? This is your camera then? No, it's not mine. However, it's not yours either, That's right, but... Haven't I had enough of this mysterious camera? Then this is convenient. If I hand it over to this old man, then I can be rid of it. However, handing over this magic camera that I had discovered miraculously so readily over to the old man seemed wrong somehow. So I had to ask this. Well, what if I don't hand it over? Hearing such challenging words might have seemed pretty disrespectful to him. I should have been more polite, but I forgot that, and unconsciously I treated him like a friend. For just a moment I had forgotten he was a terrifying demon. But perhaps thinking he'd be willing to barter something mysterious in exchange for the camera, I had said those words. Why are you saying you refuse then? Well, no, it's just, since I found this camera, if you say you want it, well, then you gotta give me something for it. It's a lost article, you know. I should at least get a 10% finder's fee. As the sky began to darken, I felt a chill and began to tremble from the sudden cold. I sensed it right when I said those rude words. Then I realized it. I realized that I should have chosen my words more carefully. Oh, shit. Exactly when the sun began to set, I looked at the old man. His face was completely covered in pure darkness. I felt that moment of silence would have been scarier than any scream. Ah! Kids these days can't be helped, can they? If you speak modestly with them, they must understand themselves as equals. Perhaps, like in the old days, I'll have to show you how to respect your elders, Takashi Nonomio-kun? Look at his eye! Then I had this strange delusion. I thought I was shrinking. No, I felt as if my feet were sinking in a swamp. The old man, the walls too. I watched as they grew taller until even the sun finally disappeared behind the old man. I realized the mistake I had made all too late. Even though I had no room to negotiate or anything of the sort, I still said something so conceited. Takashi Nonomiya-kun, perhaps you need something to light your fire, Or do you no longer think you're such a clever child, I wonder? Takashi Nonomiya-kun? The old man's gigantic head, with his face shadowed in complete darkness, completely blocked out the sky above me. I didn't know whether my legs were shrinking or if I were sinking into the asphalt. Ah! I gotta find the camera! Someone help me! This isn't the school, you know. Headmaster. Oh my, Higanbana-kun, When I heard that voice, the spell that had been cast on me disappeared. The old man's gaze locked onto something behind me. I looked behind me, and sitting gracefully atop the wall was that girl I met in that twilight hallway. A cool breeze rustled her beautiful hair and her extravagant skirt. She looked like a Western doll that had been brought to life. But at the same time, just like the old man, her being here reminded me of how a how out of place they seemed in this dirty back alley. Well, I had just had a heaping dose of out of place moments ago. Now I'm probably just misunderstanding things. They're not out of place. Surely under these circumstances, I'm the one who can't even protect himself, and I'm the one who is out of place here. I am Takashi Nonomiya-kun's friend. Giggle giggle. Oh my, is that so? One must take good care of their friends. Do you intend to lay a finger on him? If I, Higanbana, will become your opponent? Is that so? The old man called Headmaster and the girl called Higanbana had gentle tones in their voices, but it seemed they clearly had bad blood between them. And that girl called Higanbana might have made herself my ally. Takashi Nonomiya-kun, move, or you'll be swallowed up. Heh! Wah! Just as she said, once again I felt my legs sinking into a pond. But it wasn't a pond. Oozing and expanding from the feet of the old man known as Headmaster was a pure black shadow. It was like tar, and the humans it swallowed must be pulled into the next world. That feeling I had moments ago was just my imagination. I was truly in the middle of being swallowed. I ran back to the girl named Higanbana. She dropped in front of me and stood in front of the Headmaster, blocking his path. For a moment I felt I trusted her, but she was also a terrifying otherworldly creature. I could sense a terrifying aura seeping from her back. But for now, at least she was my ally. But because of that, I didn't feel I could trust her. Because they might be fighting like a fox and a badger over me, their prey. How rude. Why can't you just think, thanks so much for protecting me, I wonder. I'm sorry! I'd rather think carefully. They can read my thoughts. There was no maybe about it any longer. They were truly not human. Don't you think it'll be a futile battle, Oh, can you really call it a fight, though? Taking you on at my age, with the way you play, it's exhausting, you know. Then how about you go home and rest? I'll even spoon feed you some gruel befitting a bedridden man like yourself. Giggle, 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 giggle. Perhaps you need something to light your fire, I'm familiar with the legend of the Seven, you say. That's right. The School 7 Mysteries. It has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Giggle, giggle, giggle. God, that fucking face. The pond that seeped out like a black shadow from the Headmaster's feet oozed over toward us and climbed over the walls. It was as if he were spilling out a world of darkness from the center of where he stood. And that black pond gradually came to Higanbana's feet. It must have been something truly terrifying even for Higanbana. If not, then the Headmaster wouldn't have moved his pond forward and the like. But Higanbana calmly laughed without making a move. She seemed to be standing there like a fool. Is it alright if I eat you, It was probably the checkmate declaration. Once I noticed it, the black mud was already at her feet. No, not quite at her feet. It was surrounding her in a space about the size of a manhole. That means that if Higanbana didn't finally surrender, she would be swallowed up without a second thought. She had seriously provoked him. Even though the Headmaster's voice is calm, I think he's mad with rage. After he gets her, just like that, he'll surely come and eat me. If I don't run away right now. But my legs had slipped out from under me, and I couldn't even lift myself up from the ground. And I might not be able to run away any longer. I mean, look, the sun has set as if to close everything within the shadow of darkness. And around me, all that was left was a space the size of a manhole, because everything had been concealed by the black marsh. I won't ask you again, you know. Is it alright if I eat you? Before you eat me, what if I think I'll be seeing you off to the infirmary sooner, Headmaster? Oh? Higanbana standing there laughing seemed like certain death, and this exchange between them must have been just her way of somehow extending her playtime. But as to why she was playing a game that would only make sense during the day at school was hard to understand. This is a game played by those who control the time after the sun has set on the school. Your lazy swamp sure is taking quite some time to get to me, isn't it? I'm bored. I'm faster, you see. Warned for a moment, injured for a lifetime. They won't even be able to put you in the infirmary. I see. A good proverb indeed. Even if a lifetime of an injury can result from a moment of carelessness, you see. Holy shit. See? I am that moment. It happened in a moment just as she had boasted. The inner walls on either side of the headmaster swelled up and erupted from all sides. It was different from an explosion, swelling up and rupturing free. Warped spearheads grew like a monster claws and wrapped around the headmaster. It seemed for the moment that he was like a bird trapped in a cage of thorns. When I looked closer, I saw that they were the iron rods that were inside the concrete walls, and they had curved outward and extended, even sharpening their tips into spears. Countless spears surrounded him, aiming at his throat. Maybe now there was no harm in standing up, but for some reason, as if I tripped or fell over somewhat, I might land throat first into one of those spears. In other words, I was so completely surrounded by warped spears that I couldn't even move. Of course, looking around Higanbana's feet, it seemed like the same for her. The manhole-sized space that was once around her feet was gone. Perhaps there was just enough there to surround the soles of her feet. This was a critical moment for Higanbana. If she changed her stance even slightly, she would be immediately swallowed up by the pond. There was no doubt that they were both on the verge of taking each other's life at this moment. How like you indeed. You're a troublesome one. Look for an early retirement, okay? But how about I make this your farewell address? Watch your language, Otherwise you'll surely just bring unnecessary hardships on yourself, won't you? Oh? And what if I want to gladly let you make me taste those hardships? Giggle, giggle. Perhaps you can't. Well then, there's no need to watch what I say, is there? Oh dear. Karma. Everything is like the wheel. What you unleash will certainly come back to you. Then there's no problem. Aren't we the ones free from those in that cycle of life and death? What do you mean by that? Takashi Nonomiya-kun, let's ask you. Truth or peace, which do you value more? Huh? I hadn't thought I would suddenly be dropped into the conversation. My heart began leaping in my chest. But after seeing that otherworldly scene, there was no doubting the truth that they were yokai, and that yokai was once again talking to me. Perhaps you should choose. Truth, peace. Which do you value more, Don't lend him your ear. If you replied with peace, what do you think would happen? Higanbana-kun sees your trickery. I'm asking him. Well, Takashi Nonomiya-kun, which do you value more? Truth and peace. What does he mean by having peace in opposition to truth? Perhaps he means denying the truth, therefore having peaceful days through ignorance. Surely, ignorance can be bliss, but that can't be a good thing. For humans, even if we don't want to, there are truths that we must know. For instance, an environmental problem is a good example. If I were to discuss it, surely we'll have to face some restrictions in our lifestyles. But nonetheless, if we pretend we don't know about it and continue living peacefully, the price will certainly befall the future of humanity. Haven't I learned that from life in the newspaper cloth? If people avert their eyes from the truth, thrusting it at them, we must raise these questions. Marie Moria's photograph certainly was a strange thing, but Marie, who had been caught in that photograph, was forgotten by her classmates and everyone else, even her own mother. By showing her that photo, her mother remembered. Sure, it might have been something shocking, undertaking the impact of which she'd forgotten until now, I can understand why she'd temporarily panic. But Maria Moria must have been happy with that I had let her remember. She must be rejoicing somewhere. Perhaps she's been swallowed by this demon called Headmaster and her existence extinguished. And that camera dug up the truth that Maria Moria certainly did exist. It brought back her existence that had been extinguished with the power of a yokai. That's it. When revealed on film, it becomes the truth. Regardless of what might be revealed there, just seeing it invokes the truth. And when I saw the power of this mysterious camera with my own eyes, I was certainly terrified. But if I think about it, I didn't do anything strange. But what was strange was the disappearance of Maria Moria's very existence. That was much worse. With that camera, I tore through the doubt and revealed the truth. I protected the name of Maria Moria, and without even opening my mouth, I had created my clear answer. So he thinks, Headmaster. Takeshi Nonomiya-kun chose truth. To choose truth over peace. So like a youngster to say. Very well, Higanbana-kun. Perhaps we should stop here for now, How wise. After all, I don't want to get my favorite shoes dirty. I agree. I don't want my favorite overcoat to be full of holes either, you sir. The warped spears that surrounded the headmaster, as if being rewound on a videotape, began to be swallowed by the walls they had ruptured from. And returning to a bulge, they gradually became flat. As if nothing had happened at all, the rain-stained walls returned to their original smoothness. At the same time, the ground nearby that had been completely filled with a black pond, moving sloppily, began to return to the headmaster's feet. I noticed that everything around was as it was before, even the brightness of the sky. I felt as if I had been squaring off for a long time. But perhaps it was for an instant. The smell of fried food reached my nose. That was probably that smell that hung in the air earlier, even though it felt like that smell had returned. How can I best describe it? I felt as if the air of the living had returned. If so, was that back alley a different world than this one? Now that I think of it, I can't tell. Well then, I suppose I'll excuse myself then, shall I? Takeshi Nonomiya-kun, I've been keeping you, haven't I? Head straight home. Well then, Higabanku, some other time. Yeah, some other time. That's even a creepier face. I'll come visit you and bring some gruel. And bring your gruel, just a spoonful. Giggle, giggle. Ho ho. May I have two? You're right. You've earned the honor. I'll bring 2 helpings of gruel. Later then, take care of yourself. Indeed, indeed. The doll in the infirmary would say something like that in farewell, eh? Oh ho ho ho. The headmaster's figure slowly diluted away. It was like a swaying mirage image, damn it. Thinking my eyes were getting fuzzy, I wiped my eyes, and when I looked again, he had completely disappeared. However, Higanbana didn't disappear, and there she was. She returned to me and stretched out her hand. She was laughing mischievously, as if wordlessly wondering how long I had been lying there. Thank you for helping me. You're welcome. If I had come just a tad later, you would have unknowingly disappeared here in this alley on the way home from school, you know. Not just your physical form, but from the class register and group pictures too, yeah? Of course, maybe even your teacups might disappear from your house. Giggle, giggle. Higanbana laughs as if to say, as you are now, you understand best of all, don't you? A moment longer and I would have been sucked into that pure black pond. And then, like Maria Moria, even memories of my existence will surely disappear from the face of the earth. And aside from photographs this mysterious camera captured, my existence would be completely forgotten. In our school, he's been a school yokai for a very long time, you see. We call him school yokai for the first rank, headmaster. I am Higanbana of the 3rd rank. Haven't you seen the western dolls sitting atop the medicine cabinets in the infirmary? No. I've never gone to the infirmary. Oh, then I'll invite you next time. I'll send an invitation along with an appropriate injury worthy of the infirmary, perhaps. Giggle, giggle, giggle. Higanbana gave a mischievous smile, but it didn't feel like laughing. Just watching her last exchange, she seemed more dangerous than the headmaster. What I saw was what seemed like the headmaster attacked her with everything he had and begrudgingly had to retreat. That terrifying creature was right in front of my eyes. If I had the impoliteness I had before, this time I would certainly be killed. Right, that's fine with me. Fear communicates respect. It's one of the fundamental rules of etiquette, so one doesn't get cursed. Don't worry. It's just like he said, you see. If I intended to eat you, I wouldn't wait and I'd take you in a single bite. Talking with you like this means, at least for now, I have no intention of doing so. For now? There's no need to be afraid, you see. Right now, the soul of Takashi Nonomiya-kun just doesn't look that tasty. I don't have the urge yet, you see. Giggle. Looking at it now, all the fuss would ruin the flavor, which means I can't relax at all. Because now I clearly understand who's dominant on the food chain between us. Well, come with me. This alley is his barrier. If you're by yourself, no matter how far you walked, you would only keep circling around the same alley, you see. Why me? Why was the yokai who treated humans like food saving me? As long as I couldn't know for sure, I couldn't come with her. After Higanbana made a face as if to say, oh jeez, as a serene expression befitting her returned, she spoke. Because you're getting revenge for my friend. So perhaps you could call it returning the favor. Revenge? Today you went to my friend's house and let her mother memories return. Oh, of Maria Moria-san. Yes, Maria is my friend, and he erased her existence. That old man known as the headmaster. Having everyone forget about her isn't such a bad thing. Even if all the people in school forget about her, then at least he'd want her family to remember her, right? But because he's ruthless, he snatched away memories even from her parents. Right? Isn't that terrible? What in the world is this camera? It's equipment from our class, you see. It can't be fooled by trickery of any kind. It shows the truth. Earlier when I looked at her name tag, it was as if it were washed out by the rain, and I couldn't read it. But now I could read it faintly. Her class was Classroom B. No, I could read Classroom 13 written there. Certainly there were many classes and students in the school, but I didn't think there was any grade with a Classroom 13. At least for humans, that is. Classroom 13. Perhaps that's the classroom where the yokai live in the school. And speaking of that classroom's equipment, it makes sense something with mysterious power would come from there. You can imagine it, can't you? To him, that camera is an inconvenience, because it will release the human he ate, you see. He didn't just eat her humanity, but even her existence. Taking a picture with that camera, bringing back her presence, is the same as taking the food out of him. Not just her meat and bones, but to even eat her very existence. What a terrifying yokai. Well, there's also times that's convenient. Giggle. Among the classmates coming in and out of the newspaper club, you were in the same class as Marie, so I made you find that camera. Just as the headmaster said, that camera had been carefully sealed away, and he said it wasn't something humans could simply find. It made sense. This Higanbana person wanted revenge for her friend, removed the seal on the mysterious camera, and allowed me to find it. Exactly right. I gave you that camera. Would she let me keep it, I wonder? And then, as if to confirm it, she giggled again. Alright, I'm gonna stop now, because man, it's getting late. Whoa, the story is getting so crazy so far. I wonder exactly how this... I don't know. I mean, normally with these Ryukishi videos, well not videos, Ryukishu novels, you basically have to think outside the box and start to question why is this necessarily happening. To me, well, the existence of Marie Moria is kind of strange. Like, I don't know if she's basically the game's version of a yokai or a forgotten yokai or something like that, or just maybe she existed, or maybe she. I can't really describe for sure. Maybe there was a Marie Moria, but she died from the teacher, and somehow she's. Maybe she didn't die. Think of it this way: she was killed by the teacher. She came back to life and started posing as like Higanbana or something, and possibly doing all these tricks and stuff. And it's been like some time after Merie's death that her parents thought of her as dead, but then they. Maybe I'm thinking too much. I don't know. If you got any questions and comments, guys, let me know. And, yeah. No spoilers, though. And, yeah, that's basically it. Thank you for joining me on part 3 of Higanbana no Saku Yoru ni. And, that's it. See you next time. Bye. Thank you.